Right, time for a special interview here on NDTV. My guest is a renowned astrophysicist, one of the most credible voices in the field, an author and a cosmic communicator. He has spent decades unraveling mysteries of the universe. He's the director of the Hayden Planetarium and has popularized space science through his award-winning TV show, Cosmos. You may have also seen him in a cameo on the hit American sitcom, The Big Bang Theory. Neil deGrasse Tyson, thank you so much for speaking to NDTV. I'll begin by asking you, did you watch Sunita Williams' return to Earth? What was going on in your mind when you saw Sunita and Butch Wilmore emerge from that capsule?
Well, I was reminded by the fact that they put them into a wheelchair that they haven't walked in 9 months. So there's no reason to think that their muscles wouldn't be able to hold them up, because on the space station, they have many ways to exercise where they simulate a load on your body, such as what you might find on Earth. The difference is when you spend that much time being weightless, your ability to judge and orient yourself for what is up and what is down, and if you're tipping or not, is compromised, because you've never had to use these tools of the inner ear to establish what is up and what is down. And so from the astronauts I've spoken with, friends of mine and others, they make it clear it takes a few days to readjust to what it is to be back on Earth's surface.
Right, Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, for a layman, for us to understand, how long do you think it will take for both the astronauts to get back to their daily lives?
Yeah, from what I've been told, again, I have not been in space or had sustained periods of weightlessness. But so all of this that I know is from others who have, some of whom have spent a very long time in space, like Scott Kelly, the astronaut who spent 340 days in space. He's in the top 10 among those who have spent consecutive days there. And typically within a week, they completely recover and readjust to being in 1G. So the one thing I found most funny about readjusting is if you hand someone a glass to drink from and they just came back from orbit, they'll just let go of the glass when they're done with it, and then it just drops and breaks. So you want to make sure the first few beverages you give them is in a plastic vessel, just to make sure that nothing breaks for those first few days.
Right, and everyone is in a jubilant mood now, but it's clearly very, very difficult considering it took 9 months to bring both astronauts back to Earth. So according to you, Mr. Tyson, what are the lessons we can draw from this entire mission?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, the biggest lesson is that, well, there are two lessons. One, oh my gosh, we're living in the future. Well, how do we know? Oh, because when the first plan A, failed to return on the Boeing Starliner, you just bring in plan B. And what is plan B? It's another rocket from a whole other private company. And so consider the luxury to even have that as a choice. Never mind there was a 9-month delay. The fact that we had options is a sign that the space frontier is becoming part of our everyday understanding of where human beings can be. And so that's one takeaway. Another takeaway is maybe if this is becoming more common, that we will always have a spare rocket in the garage that you can sort of roll out. And so that it wouldn't be a 9-month delay. This would be the sort of the rescue rocket. And you can even paint it a little differently, you can have fun with that. And the rescue rocket will go retrieve anybody who's in space. If someone gets sick, for example, you can come up with many reasons why one would want to come back sooner than the scheduled launch, return mission. So if I were to have a takeaway and I were NASA or any other space agency, given how many rockets are available to us, you put one on reserve just for this occasion.
Right, and if we speak specifically about Sunita Williams, what would you say about her spirit, which she showed during these 9 months in space? She was always seen as someone who was upbeat, never losing hope. So any comments particularly on Sunita Williams?
Yeah, well, forgive me for not even thinking she had Indian heritage. I just thought of her as American, okay? Because America has huge diversity in who is American. So, and in fact, she calls herself, and everyone, all her closest friends call her Sunny, because S-U-N-I, you abbreviate Sunita. I would have abbreviated Sunny, but everyone says Sunny. And maybe that's because she always has a sunny disposition. Consider that both she and Butch Wilmore, the two who were branded as stranded astronauts, I thought about that and I said, well, wait a minute. There's a half dozen other people on the space station. There's food, there's water, even though the water is recycled urine, but that's normal up there. That's okay. And the only thing, maybe they didn't bring enough pairs of underwear or something. All right. But other than that, given that they are professional astronauts, and NASA says, sorry, you have to spend extra time in space when for so many people, that's their goal to get to space at all. At no time did I have sympathy for them, and I don't think they needed the sympathy, personally. So, but yes, and any images you saw of them floating around, and it's fun when Sunita, she let her hair go, and of course, hair, if it's 0G, the hair just floats. And so I had her on my podcast, and it was fun. She swung her hair around, and I said, Sunita, aren't you like absorbing all the dust in the air? So your hair is like a mop, an air mop. And she, as she swung her hair around. So that was a fun little exchange we had. Yeah, that no time did they look sad or depressed. And by the way, this should be true, I think, with all space agencies. I know it's true with NASA that when they select their astronauts, they're selected not only for the physiology, that they're physically fit to handle such a mission, but that they're also emotionally fit. All right. And when you're emotionally fit, things like, okay, instead of 8 days, it's 9 months, you don't see them freaking out or reacting in some way that would jeopardize the safety of the crew. So that's why I was never worried, even if everybody else was.
Right, and the fact that SpaceX was able to bring the astronauts back so successfully, and you have in the recent past said that Elon Musk hasn't done anything that NASA hasn't done already. So what would you say to him today?
Oh, by the way, so those bits of me online describing SpaceX and what they have, quote, accomplished versus what NASA has accomplished, that's blown way out of proportion. Okay? I will make a simple fact. It is a true fact that what SpaceX has done in space is more of what NASA had already done in space. Okay? NASA built the space station on the back of the shuttle, literally from the back of the space shuttle. So, and NASA took cargo and astronauts. Now SpaceX and other possibly competing companies can take cargo and astronauts. This is okay. This is great. That's how it should be. All right. The real value of SpaceX and other private enterprise is that once they see what needs to be done, what was done first by NASA, they have the latitude to figure out how to do it for less or more affordably, more rapidly. There's less bureaucracy. There's more streamlining that goes on in private enterprise than what you would find in a government agency. So that's understood and expected because the government is doing it first. And if you're doing it first, you don't even yet know how to streamline it because no one has ever done it before. So this is a natural evolution. of something that governments do first, and then it's handed over to private enterprise. And I know because I spent some time with your prime minister, and we chatted briefly during his trip to New York about the future of ISRO and just general space exploration in India. And he has strong interest in bringing private enterprise to participate in that as well. So he sees, and presumably any other leader would see, this would be the natural evolution of such a thing. So what would I say? I would say I'm glad we had another spaceship. And this round it was SpaceX. In another round it might be some other company. That's the future that we're living in now.
So how soon do you think the concept of space tourism or space exploration is going to become more everyday, or if not everyday, a more practical thing?
So you have to bring down the price of space exploration very low so that space access, so that it is within the budget of someone who might have spent that money on an airplane going to a vacation spot with their family and a hotel. And you just add that up. And maybe if you take 2 or 3 vacations a year, add all of that up. I bet people would pool all of that money and take one trip in space. That because the novelty of that is so high, and forego a trip to the beach or wherever else they might have gone. But you have to bring that down into that range. Airplane tickets and hotels, I know in US dollars, a few $1,000s here, a few $1,000s there. Can you get a trip to space down under $10,000? I think that would blow open the marketplace. And what you could also do is hold lotteries. Lotteries are fun ways to for $1 to get on a $20,000 ride. And then if you don't win, you get to watch others who do it and they report back to you. I mean, that can be fun. I would buy a lottery ticket for that. And by the way, space tourism, we have to distinguish between what Bezos and Branson are doing, the billionaire boys space race. Bezos and Branson are sending you up above the atmosphere and then you fall back. So the whole trip takes a half hour. Whereas when you go into orbit that is much higher above Earth's surface, and that's what Elon has done with his SpaceX vessels. So is your tourism, let me go up above the atmosphere for a half hour and take a look down at Earth and get some of that overview effect that astronauts have spoken of? Or do I want to go into orbit and watch 16 sunrises in a day, in a 24-hour period? Or do we have a colony on the moon or Mars? These are different ascending levels of vacation destinations that I don't see why we can't or shouldn't look forward to that in the coming decades.
So do you see that becoming a regular feature in your lifetime?
Well, for me, as an astrophysicist, I have different standards, okay? So here's what they are. Do you realize if you take Earth and shrink it down to a schoolroom globe, now you can ask, where are all of these space missions going? Well, the Bezos and Branson, where you go up and fall back to Earth, they go the thickness of 2 coins above Earth's surface. That's how high they're going. And yet people still want to call that space. And I'm saying, okay, but I'm an astrophysicist. Well, let's go to the next level. How about orbit? Well, they're about 1 centimeter above Earth's surface. And they're boldly going where hundreds have gone before. Okay, that's still important as a personal experience, but send me somewhere to the moon, Mars, and beyond. And on this scale, just so you know, on this scale, the moon is 10 meters away. Mars is 1.5 kilometers away. You're really traveling to get to those places. And yes, then sign me up. I'll be in the front of the line. Oh, no, I joke about this. I say, if you want me to get on an Elon rocket, if Elon has a rocket that does it, I'll say, first, Have him send his mother to Mars and back, and then I'll go. Then I'll know it's safe. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good challenge for Elon Musk. But coming back to India, you mentioned your meeting with our Prime Minister. Now, during that meeting with PM Modi, you said that the potential for what India can accomplish knows no limits. So where do you put India in the space race?
Yeah, I'm not in the business of ranking activities. I think what matters is what are your ambitions? And depending on your resources, you can direct resources to realize those ambitions slowly or quickly. When China decided they want to go in space, after they were not allowed to participate in the space station, this goes back to the early 1990s, late 1980s, there was the collapse of the Soviet Union, and we saw a lot of scientists there. And we said, we want to bring them in. So the space station is fundamentally a collaboration between the United States and the Soviet Union with other countries and organizations participating. But that was sort of the root basis of that, the international status of the space station. So over that time, China said, well, we're going to still go into space. They had a growing economy, very important fact. When you have a growing economy, there's money there that you can siphon. And not that it goes unnoticed, but it doesn't harm anything else that you might also hold as a high priority. And so China says, we want to send up our first taikonaut. They did that. The Chinese word for astronaut, taikonaut, sent them up. We're going to put a rover on the moon. They did that. We're going to build a space station. They're doing that. All right. So these are ambitions being realized. So, and by the way, there was talk that India was able to land near the South Pole for a fraction of the money that NASA spends to accomplish the same thing, and more power to that level of streamlining of construction and development, R&D and execution of that R&D. But I will make the observation that the fraction of India's total budget, you have a word for it and I forgot what you call it, the total annual budget in NASA, and you can ask what fraction of that budget goes to ISRO. It is tiny. It's less than 1%. That's how tiny it is in the United States. NASA's budget that pays for it, the space station, the telescopes, the Hubble telescope, the James Webb telescope, the rovers on Mars, our astronauts in space, that is less than 0.5% of our budget.
Right, and Mr. Tyson, you also mentioned in your previous answer about the curiosity of searching for extraterrestrial life. So what are your views on that?
Oh, I think, by the way, my people, astrophysicists, have engaged this question now for 6 decades. We've devised telescopes to look for signals that might be sent by extraterrestrial intelligence. NASA has its plan for the solar system is to follow the water, because everywhere on Earth where you have liquid water, you have life. Even the Dead Sea in the middle has life. The fact that it's named the Dead Sea is evidence that no one had a microscope to see the microorganisms. But so we're looking for liquid water in the solar system where we might then find microbial life. So I'm all in for life somewhere in the universe. But I don't see evidence yet that we've been visited.
Yet. Okay.
Yeah, that's not, scientists wouldn't call that evidence.
Right, but on a lighter note, let me ask you, do you have a favorite alien movie or a favorite space exploration movie?
The movie Contact, the Carl Sagan novel, became a movie in the 1990s. It portrayed our first contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. And they portrayed the aliens correctly, or well. You know how they did it? They didn't show them at all. It just showed their technologies and their influence on our thinking. So that's one way to do it. Another favorite sci-fi movie, but it didn't involve aliens, is the movie The Martian, where we strand an American, a human astronaut on Mars and they have to go get him back. There's a lot of science in that film that was to be celebrated. Science of many different branches: botany, engineering, astrophysics, mathematics. And for me, science was a character unto itself in that film. And that's a good way to be.
Right. And Mr. Tyson, my final question to you, what would you say to a young person watching this interview? You're an icon, one of the most credible voices in astrophysics. What would you say to someone interested in space or space research, or someone who wants to become an astronaut?
I would say two things. First, I wouldn't talk to the kids. I would talk to the grown-ups. And I would say, get out of their way. Okay. Often the grown-up wants you to become the doctor or the this, or they force, they're not letting you completely dream. And so some of the grown-ups need to get out of the way, first of all. Second, take note that the language of the universe is mathematics. Right? So if you want to go to China and speak to, you learn Mandarin. You go to Spain, you learn Spanish. Okay? You want to learn Hindi. Okay? If you want to speak to people who do not speak you got to learn their language. Okay? The universe, the language is mathematics. So as you study physics and math and chemistry, put the math in there with it and take as much of it as you can. And then you become more and more fluent in how to talk to the universe and how to participate in this great unfolding story of cosmic discovery.
Mr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, thank you so much for making time here on NDTV.